to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode on the Musafir Stories podcast. Hope you all had a great festive period and are looking forward to seeing out the rest of the year on a high. We managed to catch a much needed break ourselves, and we are now back with an all new episode taking you to the mountains with Antarik Anwesan, an avid traveler and a YouTuber. So let's hop onto the episode and find out where Antarik is taking us to today. So without introduction, we'd love to welcome Antarik Anwesan, a traveler, vlogger, and YouTuber to the Musafir Stories. Antarik, thank you so much for being on the Musafir Stories and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Seth, for having me.
Thank you, Antarik. And as I was telling you before we started the recording, it's been a long time wish to have you on the podcast, and glad that we found the time and our schedules could match up, so we're doing this. But the introduction I gave, Antarik, about you is very, very short. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and where you're talking to us from?
So, hi everyone, my name is Antarik Anwesan. I'm a travel content creator and YouTuber. I've been into the travel industry for a while now, like as a blogger. So I started blogging back in 2008 when I was in 11th standard. Mm-hmm. From there, like I then got into a filmmaking institute. So I got into filmmaking. So I have a background in that. So I used to document my travels in my blogs a lot for a long time. And eventually I used to shoot videos as well. So a few years back, I was like, why not put these videos that I'm shooting on YouTube? Like I can be a vlogger as well. So that's how I started travel vlogging. And it's been a few years now. So I was doing a lot of freelance work and travel blogging and all of these. And like after COVID, I took up a job. Mm-hmm. Currently, I live in McLeod Ganj in Himachal Pradesh. I'm not exactly working from the mountains, but I'm working here in the mountains with a travel company.
Okay.
So it's been a few months now since I moved here, and yeah, that's about it.
Okay, wonderful. I think really looking forward to the conversation. And tell us a little bit more. I think you told us that you're working out of McLeod Ganj these days. Where are you taking us to today then?
So I'm actually going to show you around McLeod Ganj today with a little local perspective of the entire region.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with, I know a lot of people would have heard about McLeod Ganj, and I think it's no longer, you can't really call it a quaint hill station anymore. I think it's pretty commercial and pretty mainstream. So most people do touristy stuff there. So it'll be good to get a view from the perspective of how living there is like, and your perspectives into it. Awesome. Really looking forward to this conversation. Just in terms of orientation for people who might not have heard about McLeod Ganj before, do you want to outline where McLeod Ganj is, Antarik?
Sure. Yeah. So McLeod Ganj is located in northern Himachal Pradesh. This is actually like if you're coming from Delhi or Chandigarh or all these areas, like from Delhi it takes about 12 hours in a bus. This is exactly Kangra district, which is actually bordered close to Punjab.
Right. Yeah. And situated, like I said, in the lap of the Dhauladhar hills or the Dhauladhar ranges, right? So that way we are pretty high too, about 5,500 feet or so above sea level. So yes, get ready for some hill station feels, I guess, during the course of the conversation. Now, also, Antarik, historically or traditionally speaking too, I mean, again, not historically is relative, but yeah, at least starting the 1950s, 60s, this place also has like a significant and a very prominent Tibetan connection to it, right? It's popularly been referred to as Little Lhasa or Mini Tibet in India. So do you want to give a highlight or overview of that connection as well?
Yeah, sure. In 1959, when the Dalai Lama fled Tibet, so the Indian government gave them a place to stay in India. So this place was like this hill around DharamShala. So DharamShala is the main town in Kangra district, which is also the second capital of Himachal Pradesh. Right. So the government of India gave them this land, like this entire mountain, effectively, which was called McLeod Ganj. So the entire Tibetan community could come and settle down here. So the Dalai Lama's current residence is located here in Tibet, in McLeod Ganj, and there's a huge Tibetan settlement here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically the Tibetan government in exile is based out of here, right? So that way also,
yes, correct.
There's that significant Tibetan influence that one will come across while visiting McLeod Ganj. And even going back before that, obviously the place came into prominence during the Raj, right? Around the late 1800s, I think it started to get prominence after the British got this from the Sikh Empire of those days after the Anglo-Sikh Wars, and since then they've been using it as again, given its really salubrious and beautiful weather conditions, they've been using this almost like a hill station or a sanatorium of sorts, right, for their soldiers. So there's been a significant British presence also in the region, and you'll probably find influences of that too. But what I read is around 1905, there was a significant, a big earthquake, right? A 7.8 Richter scale earthquake here, and after that, pretty much. Like a lot of this,
everything was destroyed
and
everything was gone.
Yeah, almost like 20,000 people lost their lives around this area. So it went into a little bit of isolation after that. Obviously, then after independence as well, there wasn't much in terms of a lot of activity going on here until the Dalai Lama fled Tibet and made this home, right? This is his home now. So just a quick overview for the people thinking about what the name is as well. The name comes from one of the lieutenant generals of the Punjab province at that time, Donald McLeod. I think the last name is what is in the name of McLeod Ganj. So that was some context around the historical background and some of the prominent events associated to McLeod Ganj and the surrounding area. Now, just in terms of when is a good time to visit here, and even the optimal length of an itinerary one can plan for a visit to McLeod Ganj, what would you suggest and recommend, Antarik?
So usually I would recommend at least a long weekend for a plan for McLeod Ganj. A weekend is usually not enough. You should ideally have 3 or 4 days for this. Primarily because the journey, like most people are coming either from Delhi or Chandigarh, right? So the journey from Delhi to McLeod Ganj, that takes around 12 to 13 hours. So if you're coming here on a Friday evening and then you are going back on a Sunday evening, you effectively have just one night here. So that doesn't really justify the place, and you get like extremely exhausted by it. So I would usually recommend that you have at least 3 or 4 days for here. So you can like optimally like cover all the places, see all the places, and then go back comfortably. So usually the best time to come to McLeod Ganj would be like any time apart from the rains. So McLeod Ganj is infamous for being the rainiest place in all of Himachal Pradesh. So July, August, September, these are usually the worst time to be here. Honestly, like right now.
Yeah, when we were recording.
Yeah. So right now it's like even when I'm heading to work every day, it's like it just never stops pouring. So it's like the worst time to be here. So ideally the best time would be say March to June, the summer season, and then October to December, just before the winters. Because January and February again, that becomes like extremely cold. There's snowfall, and like I think people come here only if they want to see the snow.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for highlighting that. And in terms of access, it is well connected from some of the bigger cities in the vicinity, but primarily through roadways. Right? You'll have to road transport because obviously with the hills and the mountains, it's not always possible to have train connectivity. But I believe Pathankot is the nearest railway head, right? And there's also
so the nearest broad gauge railway is Pathankot, but there's actually a railway, a heritage line that runs from Kangra, which is like just 20 kilometers from McLeod Ganj. So there is the Pathankot Joginder Nagar hill railway that runs via Kangra.
So that that's one option. And I believe there's also an airport in Kangra.
There is an airport in Kangra,
That's probably the closest in terms of somebody wanting to fly in. But certainly accessible. It's just that you might have to, it might take a little bit longer getting here. So just plan accordingly and make sure you have enough time to spend in the town. Let's jump into the itinerary, and why don't you give us a quick overview of, obviously you've been here for a little bit too. And I know it's not the same thing as somebody who's making a quick tourist visit. So we'd like to look at it even from a perspective of if somebody has an extended itinerary or something like a week to explore around the place, what they'll have. So with that in mind, and also from a perspective of local, what are some of the places you would suggest to try out and visit?
So, actually, if you're coming to McLeod Ganj, you are actually going to be covering 3 or 4 major places. So, DharamShala is the main city that is located here in Kangra district. And McLeod Ganj is like one small locality of DharamShala city.
Right.
So McLeod Ganj is located on top of the hill and DharamShala is just below it. So all the buses that come to McLeod Ganj, they are all, they terminate at DharamShala. All the Volvo buses that are coming. So from there, there are actually a couple of ways to get to McLeod Ganj. You can either take a taxi or like autos, buses or anything to McLeod Ganj. It's just a 5-6 kilometer journey. Alternatively, like recently, a ropeway has been started here. So ropeway connects DharamShala to McLeod Ganj. But obviously that runs only during the daytime. So if you are reaching, like say at 5 in the morning, the ropeway won't be running so early in the morning. I think it starts around 8 or something. So that's one way of actually, it's the most scenic way of reaching McLeod Ganj.
Sure.
Yeah, and then once you're in McLeod Ganj, there are actually a few things. The most important, like the most prominent place is of course the Dalai Lama temple. It's actually a huge complex. There is a small museum inside it which documents the entire Tibetan history and how the entire the exile thing happened, like what has happened over the last 50-60 years. Then there is the actual main temple where there is this huge large Buddha statue and a huge prayer hall. So that's the area, and the Dalai Lama's residence is also located in the same vicinity. So whenever he conducts any of his talks, those happen in that area. So I'm actually yet to attend any of his talks. I hope I get to see him someday. Apart from that, in main McLeod Ganj, you can actually like just go around walking in the entire town. You don't need to have any vehicle or anything. This place is best explored on feet for a couple of reasons. One, it's very small. You can walk around the entire thing, and 2, the roads are like really narrow. If you are in a vehicle, you are going to be stuck in the vehicle in the traffic. So it's best to walk around.
Yeah. I mean, cars are probably really out of the question. That might be the worst way of getting around. But even for two-wheelers, given it's very narrow streets, it might be like a start-stop type of a thing and not very easy. So walking is, like you said, the best mode of transportation around.
It's actually the most comfortable way because you can just walk around the entire market. You can go from one place to other. There are like huge number of cafes around. So all of it can be explored on feet. So these are the main places around the market side in the Tibetan side. So on one side of the main McLeod Ganj square is the market and the Dalai Lama temple, the Kalachakra temple, all these, the Tibetan areas. On the other side, like about a kilometer on the other side, there is the St. John in the Wilderness Church. This is actually a British era church. There is nothing much special about the church in itself. Like it's an old British building. But the area around it, that's one of my favorite spots in all of McLeod Ganj, because like the church is located right in the middle of the forest, and there is a cemetery there as well. So you can just go there and just sit and explore just enjoy the vibe of the place. You can hear like loads of birds chirping, and of course there is a lot of tourist crowd as well because it's like one of the most prominent tourist spots here. But like I still enjoy going there and sitting there for a while and just enjoying the vibe of the place.
Yeah, it has that almost like a neo-gothic structure, right? The stone church, and I believe it's from 1852. Yeah. So it's pretty old to your point. And The cemetery here, it also, like McLeod Ganj was apparently one of the most favorite places of the Viceroy of British India, Lord Elgin, for I think he was here for a couple of years, and he really loved the place, and he's actually buried in this cemetery too. So that whole place, I think, got a little bit more prominence too because of Lord Elgin being buried here. The stained glasses plus the old structure too. Overall, it's situated in the mountains. Like it has that really beautiful feel and vibe to it. So one of the prominent spots, like you said, and maybe visiting during the odd hours, like early in the morning or something, just around the place also to check it out. It might be a good idea. Wonderful. So this is still in and around McLeod Ganj. Where next to would you suggest after covering off these places like the Tibetan area of McLeod Ganj plus other places in the vicinity like the church?
So these are the areas located near the market, the main square of McLeod Ganj. Then there are two villages which are located a little higher up from McLeod Ganj called Dharamkot and Bhagsu Nag. So these are slightly higher in altitude, and but they're like located less than 1.5 kilometers from the main McLeod market. So you can still walk around to here, and the entire walk from the main McLeod square to either Bhagsu Nag or Dharamkot, that's a beautiful walk because you're walking amidst the Deodar trees and the pine trees. So like even in the peak of heat, this is going to be a very pleasant walk to take. In Dharamkot basically holds significance. So it's a very small village. There's nothing of significance as such in the village itself. But Dharamkot is where the trek to Triund begins. So Triund is a very famous trekking spot, and it's an easy trek. So like even families, first-time trekkers, for everyone, this is a very recommended trek. It takes about 4 to 5 hours one way. So what people usually do is they start the trek in the morning, like say at around 10 or 11. And then they reach Triund by say 4 or 5, see the sunset there, camp overnight, and then return the next morning after breakfast. So that is the usual touristy thing to do around here, and it's like it's worth it as well because the views from up there are amazing, absolutely amazing views of the Dhauladhar ranges, and especially the Noon Peak. Noon Peak is the highest peak in the Dhauladhar, which is visible from McLeod Ganj. So you usually till around May or June you can see the entire peak covered with snow. So that's there. And then a place called Bhagsu Nag. It's actually a temple it's Bhagsu temple, on which the name of the village is Bhagsu Nag. It's a Shiva temple. And from there is a short 10-minute hike to a waterfall called Bhagsu Waterfall. It's an easy hike up. You can easily reach there in 10-12 minutes. And it's a nice waterfall when there is water in it. So basically in the post-monsoon months, September, October, November, these are times when there is like good flow of water, and the view from there is amazing. Usually in the summer months, say in the month of May or June, there is not much water, so there is not much of a view. But you would usually see these old uncles and all taking a bath there. So it's not the most pleasant sight.
But like to your point, the temple is supposed to be like a pretty ancient temple, right? It's believed to be like several thousand years old, and we actually I don't know if this is this is freely available now. We actually did an episode on Bhagsu Nag itself, like one of our guests who had spent time in and around the area that covered Bhagsu Nag pretty closely, and we did like an entire episode on that. It's available on Audible right now. It's an exclusive, so we'll share the link to that too. But just that temple and its significance, like you said, named after Bhagsu Nag. I think it was a king after whom it was named, and the Shiva temple there, and the falls in the vicinity, and Shiva Cafe is also very, very, I think, as popular as the waterfalls, right? If not more.
I think the cafe is actually more popular. People go there for the cafe.
Did you get a chance to visit there, and do you want to share that experience?
Sure. So even for me, I wanted to go there to explore Shiva Cafe. Shiva Cafe is actually it's located in an amazing setting. It's a huge area. They have the way they have constructed the entire thing. That's a huge that's a beautiful area. And the story of the cafe, I don't know how true it is, but the story is quite amazing. Like, I'll just say that very briefly. So, the owner of the cafe is a Kashmiri Muslim. Okay. So, apparently one night he dreamt that Shiva told him to go to this place and build a cafe there. So I'm not sure how true this story is, but like this is something of a myth. I never found the actual owner of the place to ask him about it. So yeah, that's about it. And the food there is like the first time I went there, I thought the food was good, but like having been to other cafes around, I would say the food there is okay. People go there to smoke up.
Yeah, that's true. We won't say what or what not, but yeah, it's very popular. Almost like it is a part of the pop culture in and around that area, right? And everywhere, I think for pretty much every blog or write-up you see about McLeod Ganj or the areas around, Shiva Cafe always gets a mention, right? True. So always good just for the vibe of it, visiting there. And now obviously there's so many more cafes now, so it might not be the food that is really the USP of the place, but yeah, just the whole vibe and just spending some time there, music, looking at the starry nights or whatever, like all of those things, I guess.
It's a lovely place to just be around.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, make sure you make a visit. It's not too far away from there, right? Probably a 10-15 minute walk up.
Yeah, actually less than that. I think just 5-7 minutes. It's a steep climb up. I think you have to take a good set of stairs, but just 5-7 minutes away from the waterfall. From the Shiva Cafe, you can actually see a beautiful sunset as well. So if you're going there in the afternoon time, that would be the ideal time to go. You can see the sunset and then walk back down before it gets too dark, because that area is a little not so safe in the nights.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely like a good mix of religious or spiritual with the temple plus nature in terms of the waterfall, and obviously cap it off at the Shiva Cafe, right? So could easily make like a a day trip type of thing. So for somebody going there, it's definitely it should be on your to-do list. Yeah. And any other places of interest? Yeah, go ahead.
So there's another place called Naddi. It's again a village, but that's located around 3 to 4 kilometers away from the main McLeod Ganj market. So you will probably have to take a taxi to get there. There's a lake there called the Dal Lake. So usually in the summers there's no water in the lake, but like after monsoons, the lake looks absolutely beautiful. Like you can easily spend a few hours there, maybe have a picnic, sit in some cafe, have food there, something like that. And there's a sunset viewpoint from there. So this viewpoint has the view of the entire valley. So you can see DharamShala from there. And in the far away distance, you can see the Pong Dam as well. So this is the Maharana Pratap Sagar, which was created when the dam was created there. So it's a huge dam that can be seen on a clear day only. Most days are not clear here. So that's a beautiful point to just sit and watch the sunset. So nice vibe from there.
Yeah, not the Dal Lake in Kashmir, but definitely it has its own charm, right? But I saw some images.
It's a very tiny lake as compared to the Kashmir one.
Yeah, definitely. But it's like beautiful in terms of being surrounded by a lot of these pine trees and has like grass around. So that way it's beautiful. And I believe there's also an annual fair that happens here around the August-September months by the local community, right? The Gaddis, like they're called. So that's also something that maybe if you're visiting at that time of the year, you could catch a glimpse of. But not too far away from... you said you probably have to take a ride from McLeod Ganj to get here, right? A taxi ride?
It's about 3 or 4 kilometers. So you can, obviously you can walk there if you want to, but it's just convenient because it's all uphill. So these are all the places around main McLeod Ganj. Then you can go to DharamShala and actually spend half a day there. So there is the cricket stadium, the famous cricket stadium from where you can see the entire Dhauladhar ranges. I think it is one of the most beautiful cricket stadiums in the world. So you can actually visit the stadium. Like there's an entry fee, you can visit the stadium. I think the stadium makes more money from people visiting it rather than the actual cricket matches that happen there.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, that I don't know how many people go there for the cricket, but they definitely go there for the views, right? The stadium itself is also beautiful in itself, like how it's built. But you get like beautiful views from there. That's the other piece. And I think they did, I don't know, it's not as much in terms of international cricket, but definitely like state level Ranji trophy type of tournaments. And I can't remember if they did like IPL as well recently.
Yeah, for the Punjab team, I think this was the second stadium,
right.
home ground.
Yeah.
But usually matches all get cancelled here because of the rains. It rains all the time.
That's the harsh reality of life in the hills and the mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So then there is this place that I absolutely love. It's called the Norbulingka Institute.
Mm-hmm.
It's about I think 7-8 kilometers from the cricket stadium. And this is basically a Tibetan institute where they teach all Tibetan arts and crafts.
Sure.
So you can actually visit all, like they have separate rooms for each kind of an art. So you can visit the rooms and check out the artisans actually working on different kinds of arts. And there is a monastery within the institute itself. It's a huge monastery. And there are a couple of cafes in there as well. So the cafes serve good Tibetan food. So you can easily spend 1 to 2 hours within that complex just walking around, exploring all these things. Like it's absolutely beautiful in terms of architecture, the way the trees are covering the entire buildings, all of that, that's beautiful. Then you get to learn a lot as well about the Tibetan culture there.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that a lot of these, especially embroideries and these Thangka paintings, right? Those
Thangka are the paintings,
popular paintings, the Tibetan paintings on almost like silk cotton, I think. So those, how you make those, even metal and wood carving and stuff like that. A lot of like basically Tibetan art forms or art forms that are popular in Tibet, those are actually taught here. So very, very popular for that, and a great way of learning about the culture, the Tibetan culture, right, for somebody who's interested.
Yes.
One bit of trivia I'd like to add is also, if you remember the song Sadda, right, from Rockstar, Ranbir Kapoor's Rockstar, that song apparently was shot in and around the campus. So that's another little bit.
I did not know that.
Yeah, a little bit of trivia. It does have a few spots. I think even the Wilderness Church, the St. John Church and St. John and the Wilderness Church that we visited. Mary Com, right? Their wedding was shot in that church also. So a few bits of Bollywood trivia here and there. But in general, I think for anybody visiting McLeod Ganj or DharamShala, you can find from time to time the Hollywood-Bollywood sort of connection. Obviously, the place is beautiful, so you have a lot of celebrities visiting. But because His Holiness Dalai Lama is here as well, like a lot of Hollywood celebrities actually are caught visiting Dalai Lama too. So right from Pierce Brosnan to Richard Gere, Demi Moore, a lot of these Hollywood celebrities are also often caught when they're making visits to, or caught is the wrong word, but yeah, the paps, caught by the paps, I think, when they're making these visits. So just a little bit of trivia. I'm sorry, I digress, but Norbulingka Institute is definitely one of the places you should make a visit. And this is a little way off, you said?
Yeah. It's about 7-8 kilometers from like the main Dharamshala town.
Okay. A lot of variety, as you can see, right from nature to the spiritual aspect of it in terms of temples and monasteries. There's a lot to visit. Plus, from a cultural and arts perspective too, especially from a Tibetan arts perspective, there's a lot of places you could visit. And while we go back to the town, I'll also call out a few other places. But thanks so much for mentioning all of these wonderful places. Where next would you suggest to in terms of seeing around?
So there's another monastery there. I think it's located a couple of kilometers away from the institute. It's called the Gyuto Monastery. This is actually a very huge monastery. I didn't expect to see something like that here. Like I stumbled upon it very by chance. But it's a huge monastery and an absolutely stunning monastery. So if you are there, especially in the evening time when they have the ceremony, you can actually witness the entire prayer ceremony where they beat the drums and read out all the, I don't even know what they are called, the mantras in the Tibetan language. So that's a beautiful experience to have.
Yeah. Again, depending on the time you have, and even if it's like an extended period, I think one of the things that's become popular now, I don't know for the good or for the bad, but a lot of people tend to do workations, right? Basically working out of McLeod Ganj. So if you're here for an extended time, that might be another thing to do, that you could like try out a lot of these different things that are probably done when you're on an extended trip rather than on your short tourist visit. Yeah.
Yeah, true. There's actually another offbeat place I would like to add. It's a waterfall again. It's called Gallu waterfall. So the Bhagsu waterfall is a very touristy spot. Like everyone coming to McLeod Ganj visits that. But Gallu waterfall is not very well known because thankfully it's not accessible by road. You have to trek to get there.
I see.
So it's about a 45-minute trek from Dharamkot. And it's a very flat trail, so you are not actually climbing the mountain, but because it's like within the forest and there's a very tiny narrow trail, so it tends to get a little tricky, especially like I think it should be avoided during the rains, absolutely avoided. But at other times you can visit that. So there's a natural pool there, which is like absolutely stunning. Like if you just Google Gallu waterfall, you'll probably not even find a lot of pictures of that place. But it's a beautiful waterfall. Like it's actually between two mountains. The water is cascading down at several levels. So you can walk around. Like you obviously need to be a little careful because since this is a very offbeat area, there is no security, no lifeguard, none of it there. It's just a small chai wala stall. Who actually if you look into that tea stall there, the guy who has set up that stall, he uses a torchlight for electricity there because there is no electricity. So he has a small stove in which he cooks Maggi and tea and all of that with the torchlight. So it's a beautiful place to be, just to explore around. You can easily spend 3-4 hours there.
Okay. Yeah, especially for people who are looking for almost like an offbeat place to visit and not too many tourists around, this might be a great option. And yeah, you've done a vlog there as well, right, Antarik?
Yeah, correct.
It has some really beautiful views, and the water was just, oh my God, right? It's just so beautiful, so you could definitely make a visit there. And the place is also, I don't know if it's popular, but it's known for a temple in the vicinity, I believe, right?
Yeah, so it's named after the Gallu temple that is located there. So the Gallu temple is actually the starting point for the Triund trek.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that is how it is popular around here. So honestly, I haven't visited the temple. So one trail leads from there to Triund and the other trail leads to this waterfall.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess, I don't know, I don't want to give a shout out, but as long as it remains offbeat, maybe there's a chance for you to go make a quick visit for anybody who's going to the area.
We should probably not, we should have probably not said the name of the waterfall.
Yeah. So if you find it, good for you. Otherwise, leave it alone. Yeah, awesome. So a lot of, I think one of the themes is also that, like you mentioned, a lot of like little small villages in the vicinity, right? Right from Naddi to this place to Bhagsu to Dharamkot. All of these places, like you could easily make day trips out of this. Even like you could set up like base in McLeod Ganj and make day trips out of these. And right now, I think we spoke of easily 4 or 5 places that you could make day trips to, right?
Yeah.
And ideally, also such places when you're visiting. I know for a lot of us, it'll be a little bit of a rush where we are trying to cover off things in 3-4 days, but in an ideal scenario, you would actually take it slow, take it by the day, and then try to soak it in, because the idea is you're trying to get away from the rush of city life. So exactly. So you want to take it a bit slow. So as much as possible, that might be the best way to do it. But if not, maybe like break it out into a couple of trips over weekends, long weekends, and split out these different things and get the most out of them. So thanks so much for mentioning all of these wonderful places in and around McLeod Ganj. Any other places to call out, Antarik, that you would want to highlight?
I think mostly I have covered all the places around here.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much given like a very holistic view of McLeod Ganj, not just the city, like the central square part of the area, but like the Tibetan portion of it, plus areas in the vicinity. But again, just going back to our initial conversation, if somebody is interested, especially in learning around or learning about the Tibetan culture, their art forms, etc., there's a whole lot of places you can visit in the city, in the area we touched upon earlier. I wanted to mention a few of those places just before we start to close the conversation and cover off a few things. One is obviously that big complex that we mentioned, right, where the Dalai Lama temple is. It's called as I think it's Tsuglagkhang complex. I might be butchering the pronunciation, but that's the main complex. It consists of the Gyuto Monastery, Dalai Lama's home, the Tibetan Museum, right? That's also, I think you made a mention of it. It's very, very rich in terms of the things it has, right? From it goes back to the whole struggle, right, against the uprising, against the Chinese occupation of Tibet, to a lot of artifacts, documents, a lot of those things. Plus, again, you get these beautiful Thangka paintings, pottery, manuscripts. So a bunch of things. Easily, you could spend a few hours in the Tibet Museum itself. It's again located within that complex. Then that Kalachakra Buddhist temple, right? That's also one of the prominent temples in the area. One could visit. There's the big prayer wheels, the stupas, etc., that are in the temples too, that one should definitely make a visit. And remember, whenever you're turning these prayer wheels, it's always supposed to be done in the clockwise direction, I think, right? That's what it's recommended to be done. So make sure you do that. There's a lot of beautiful prayer rooms too within the complex area. It's a pretty big complex, in relative terms. So make sure you visit there. And I think what also stood out for me, going by the different descriptions and the different places one can visit within the complex, was actually a loop one can make around this complex, right? It's almost like a circuit, you could say, a little bit of a hike, but it's easily doable. It's called the Kora circuit, I think, Kora Kora circuit. So it's a good 2-3 kilometer hike almost around this complex that one can make. It's decorated with a bunch of these prayer flags. So it's very, very beautiful too, and gives a great view of the mountains on one side, plus the temple complex on the other side. So something one should definitely keep in mind and do as a part of the visit here. Another prominent, or I wouldn't say prominent, one of the events of note as well in the past was again protesting against the occupation of Tibet. I think around 2009 there were some Tibetan monks or Tibetan folk, I think, who also set themselves on fire, right? They immolated themselves. So that also happened in and around this area. So it's one of the popular areas, especially from a pilgrimage or a Tibetan perspective, that a lot of people visit to. And for anybody interested in the learning more about Tibetan arts, the art forms, etc., there's also, besides the Norbulingka Institute that we touched upon earlier, there's also the Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts. That's also very popular. A lot of performing arts and performances happen here, so one could visit there. And besides that, there's also an annual 9-day-long festival. It's called the Shoton. It's almost like opera, right? The Tibetan opera, you could say. So that's held in the month of April. So for somebody interested, make sure to cover these off as well as a part of your itinerary. And finally, there's the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. So anybody interested in the literary works, manuscripts, etc., this has like a whole ton of books on Buddhism, on books about Tibet, just in general about the culture of the place. There's a beautiful museum too within this library. So yeah, a lot of different things one can indulge in, obviously if you have the time for it and depending on your taste. As we start to wrap this up, Antarik, tell us a little bit about the food. We haven't gotten into the food and especially the Tibetan influence over it. So what would you recommend one tries out and one eats while in McLeod Ganj?
So there are actually a lot of Tibetan restaurants around here, and a lot of Indian restaurants serving Tibetan food. And like honestly, they're all good. Some of my personal favorite places around here are so there's this one cafe restaurant called Kalimpong restaurant. It's located right on the main square, and I think it serves the best chicken and mutton momos. So they have the best momos around here. There's another place called Cafe Common Ground. It's about 200 meters from the main square. It's a vegan cafe, and they have amazing Tibetan food, like a lot of variety for Tibetan food. I don't even know what all the items are called, but I've had food there once, and it was like absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Then there's actually a lot of Israeli backpackers. They tend to come to McLeod Ganj.
Sure.
Especially to Dharamkot. So around here there are a lot of Israeli restaurants as well. Even Shiva Cafe, it has a lot of Israeli food. But honestly, I don't think I was impressed by the Israeli food there. There's another place called Dudu Falafel. It's located in Bhagsu. Very close to the temple, like around 100 meters from the temple. It's a very tiny shop, like just a tiny hole in the wall kind of a place. They have the best Israeli food from what I've experienced here until now.
I see. Okay.
And then, of course, there are a lot of, because this is such a touristy spot, there is a huge number of cafes. There's Trek and Dine in Dharamkot. There's Moonshine. There's Moonshine restaurant. There's one called Raku's Place. Raku's Place has a lot of live music happening over the weekends. So usually that's the most happening place around this side of the town. Then there is a place called Tibet Kitchen. That's another place where you can actually try Tibetan food, Chinese food, authentic Chinese food, Bhutanese food, Nepalese food, all of that.
Okay.
So, like, if you have the taste buds for that, so usually we Indians don't like the authentic food because they're a little bland in taste.
Right.
But yeah, that's like one place you can try out for like proper authentic food. And like if you could just walk around, like you are going to walk to like innumerable cafes around here.
Yeah.
Like the ones I mentioned, these are just a few of my favorites around here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, beyond the momos, I guess tukpa is very famous, right? The noodle soup.
Yeah.
So that's very popular. And also, I believe, like, there's varieties of Tibetan breads, right? Like the Tibetan brown bread, that goes well. And there's another... Tingmo, okay. Yeah, Tingmo, you're right.
Yeah.
Right, so steamed bread, that's one of the varieties of it. So a lot of new things to try out, depending on your taste and how much you're up for experimentations, you can try it out. And you mentioned a lot of good cafes, but beyond that, Nordling, the Chocolate Log, then there's also Japanese restaurants if you'd like to. Lungta, I believe, is a popular one.
Yeah, it's actually a veg Japanese restaurant.
Right. Yeah, very interesting mix of food also, right? For somebody who's a foodie, it's heaven, right? You have so many different varieties, and obviously you have the authentic stuff, right? From Tibetan to, even if somebody wants to try like the Himachali Dham, for example, right?
Yeah.
That.
Yes, correct.
So it has like the entire spectrum of it. And I also hear the chole samosa are very popular here, right? Just for a quick bite.
They're popular, but I wouldn't really recommend those because they taste okay. They're like very heavily priced for the tourists.
It's convenient, but I think they just overprice it a little bit also. So I mean, take it easy, especially if you have time. There's a lot of different things you can try out, right? And Antarik mentioned a few of them. The other thing I also wanted to quickly mention before I forget is the Bhagsu cake, right? That's also a specialty.
Correct. The Bhagsu cake is actually a superb thing. I absolutely love it. So there is a place called Singh Corner in Bhagsu. So that is where this this cake was made for the first time. Like that is what they claim. So it's basically something like a cheesecake, but instead of the cheese on top, it's a slab of chocolate. Or like it's usually white chocolate, brown chocolate, or even caramel on top of a layer of biscuit, crumbled biscuit. So that entire thing, it's very filling, and it's like it tastes amazing. Like if you have a sweet tooth, then this is something you need to have here. Like that's an absolute must do.
Yeah, very, very unique and speciality of the area, right? Bhagsu cake. I don't believe you get it as much anywhere else. So definitely try that out. And while we move on from the places and things to eat, also if somebody is looking to buy something or shop in and around the area, there's a lot of local markets too, right? Do you want to touch upon what kind of things and souvenirs one can pick up from here, Antarik?
You can actually buy a lot of woolen stuff here. The entire market around McLeod Ganj, Dhakshu, Dharamkot, all these areas, they all sell similar stuff. But it's all like the authentic Tibetan looking clothing, mufflers and jackets, even caps. And there's a lot of souvenirs that you can buy from here. They're tiny prayer wheels that are sold here. There are a lot of small plaques that they sell here with Tibetan, the Om Mani Padme Hum, the mantra that is written on it. So you can find that in like very different varieties that you can just take home and put it up somewhere. So similarly, a lot of such showpieces can be found in the markets here. You can find lockets, you can find bracelets, all in the with the Tibetan mantras written on them, and even like of course the colorful flags.
The prayer flags.
They are available in all different sizes, and you can just put it up in your car or at your home, anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. Like street markets, basically, right? It's not. It's not like a mall or anything you go to. It's all of these are primarily street markets, and a lot of little trinkets, little souvenirs, something memorable from the trip. And if you're obviously a purist, there's a lot of like Tibetan handicrafts and the tankas or the paintings we mentioned. That Tibetan carpets, that's popular. The bazaars, right? Obviously, that main square or the central square, like McLeod Ganj Central Square or the main square, like we call it, that's the main area where a lot of these shops are. But besides that, I think there's the Kotwali Bazaar. That's also like closer to Dharamshala. And then Jogibara Road, I believe. That's another place where a lot of these souvenirs one can pick up.
So from the main square, there are two roads that go. One is the Temple Road, and parallel to it is the Jogibara Road.
Okay.
So the Kalachakra temple is located right in the center. On one side is the temple road that heads to the Dalai Lama temple, and the other side is the Jogibara road that actually connects DharamShala. So there are a lot of cafes and these street shops, markets, all of it around it.
Okay, cool. And if you're in the McLeod Ganj Central Square area, make sure you visit this shop that claims to be the oldest shop in McLeod Ganj, established in 1860, I believe. Nauroji and Son, and it's famous for a lot of wooden carvings and tanka paintings and handicrafts, like we mentioned. They're popularly known as the Naurojis, or I think in the Tibetan dialect they call them as Nehrujis, apparently. So, it's very, very old, and just for the memories, and obviously you can pick up stuff from there too. But even for people who are looking to shop and buy back or take back souvenirs, there's a lot of good stuff. Literally like a complete package, right from your food to shopping to temples to monasteries and nature and hikes. We literally have touched upon a type in every one of these categories, right, Antarik?
Like there's something for every kind of a tourist here.
Yeah, and I mean the sad part might also be that that means you have like a whole lot of tourists here. Economy-wise, the locals do rely on tourism, right, as for their livelihood. So that way it is good, but as I can say a local now, right? You've been living there for a while too. As a local, I mean, you would kind of appreciate the good and bad parts of it too, right? So would you like to kind of mention from a local's perspective what are the things tourists should avoid and you encourage them not to do more of?
See, I think one of the primary things that a lot of us Indians need to inculcate in our behavior is littering. Because all these areas in the mountains, they don't have any waste disposal systems at all.
Yeah.
So, people come here, they just throw around plastic and bottles, chips, packets, and all of these in the trails. So there is absolutely no way to dispose them of. So that becomes a huge issue, and that actually causes that contributes to the floods that happen here as well.
Yeah.
Because the drains, they get clogged and there's no way for the water to go. So that creates overflowing of the nalas, and then there are landslides. So that happens. So that's one primary thing. And apart from that, I think as a tourist, if you're coming here, you should come here to experience the vibe of the place and not play loud music on the trails, because a lot of the crowd that comes here, they tend to do that. You're walking on the trail, you are going on a trek, and you are playing loud music from a speaker. That just kills the entire vibe of the place. So that's something that should be avoided. I think these are a few things that just we need to inculcate in our behavior in any place that we are going to.
Yeah, in general, right? Yeah, it doesn't have to be McLeod Ganj overall, because I keep saying this as well. Tourism or mass tourism, over tourism, it is going to be a reality, right? With disposable incomes, everybody will travel. But we have to, at least if we want to preserve these places so that we can travel, future generations can travel, we have to mend our ways, right? Not spoil these places that we visit to. Treat them as home. That's what I would say. Most simple, basic advice would be, would you do all of these things like glittering and all of that at home? You won't, right? So why do it in places which is, you shouldn't do it anywhere, but more so in your own country, you shouldn't be doing that, right? So please be mindful of that, and be mindful that this does impact not just nature and ecology, but also the locals living there. So I think that's some wonderful advice. And overall as well, I'd love to thank you, Antarik, for being on the podcast, sharing all of these beautiful tidbits, these tips and suggestions and recommendations of going around and enjoying a trip around McLeod Ganj. How can listeners keep track of your work and follow your travels and your vlogs?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show, Saif. So I am available on Instagram at I am Antarik. It's IAMANTARIK. That's where I keep posting my most regular stuff here. Whatever I'm doing, all the issues that I keep facing here in the mountains, all of those, I keep posting that on a regular basis. Apart from that, I have a YouTube channel. It's again my name, Antarik Anwesan. You can on the search bar, you can write youtube.com/Antarik1212. So that's just easier to reach. I know my name is a little difficult to get hold of. So I keep posting a lot of travel content on my YouTube channel. And recently, since I moved here, I've been posting videos about life in the mountains here. So a lot of people have been finding that very interesting. So in case anyone is interested, they can take a look.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll make sure to include all of these links in the show notes so people can check out Antarik's YouTube channel, as well as more frequent updates through his Instagram page.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for showing us showing us a view of the life in the mountains, like you mentioned. And I think during the course of the recording, we also saw some of the struggles of life in the mountains, right? With the internet connectivity and power cuts and everything. That's the reality of it. But I'd like to wish you all the best, Antarik, while you're there. Do enjoy your time there. And we really, really appreciate you coming on the Musafir Stories and sharing your stories and your travels. Thank you, Antarik.
Thank you so much, Seth, for having me.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.